Well, when I look at myself, and I look at my awakening process, it was kind of an abrupt thing that happened. But when I look at you, you're more like the natural, from my perspective, who has always been in that knowing. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's the way it feels. So what I want to start out with is, can you describe how your awakening process went? What was the journey for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it was a longer. It's great that you see me as this, like, it's come from a knowing. I think a little bit, but like it's definitely been a up and down, and also a real not knowing a lot. But yeah, I think it started. It really started for me when I was 16. I don't know, I remember this piece of information coming into my life where I was like, I'm gonna die, and my parents are gonna die, and everyone I love is gonna die. And that just it was just a piece of information that came into my mind, and I was like...
Like a thought?
Like a thought. It was just it was a realization. It was like, okay, I'm gonna die, and my parents are gonna die. And then...
So where was this? Were you at school or something?
No,
what happened?
I think I was at home. Like, it was like in the evening, like I was going to bed, and I suddenly this piece of information came to me, or I just realized it, and it was like, oh my God, it's so true. Like, I'm gonna die, and everyone's
someday.
Someday. I didn't think I was gonna die right that moment, but it was just like this really clear what, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. So it was really like I ended up like crying in my bed for multiple days at end.
Because you felt it so intensely.
Because I felt so like, this is a realization, and I don't know what to do with it. Like, I couldn't give it like a place, you know? And I think in that time, and for quite a long time in my kind of process, I've really tried to conceptualize it always. I've always tried to. So I think at that moment in time, I was really trying to conceptualize it, and I just didn't know what to do with it. So I remember just being a few days like crying in bed, and then one day my dad randomly asked me, hey, do you want to go to this Buddhist meeting, as he was leaving the house, like really last moment. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
Your dad?
Yeah, my dad, who has nothing with spirituality at all. Like a friend of his asked to come along once, and so then I went together with him, and then we went down like into the city center, and these Buddhist meetings.
This was in Amsterdam?
This was in Budapest.
Budapest.
Yeah. And these Buddhist meetings are always held in these like little living rooms. So we entered this living room, we're already 15 minutes late, and there's a group of 20 people sitting there chanting to a thing like Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And as a first time coming in there, it was, it felt very weird. It felt like you just joined in the back and you don't even know the words, so you're just there like, and you can't, like, it's so hard to hear the words when a group of people are chanting. But so it was quite a bizarre experience. But then at the end, like that very meeting, after the chanting, they always had like half an hour of chanting and then an hour of talking about philosophy and life. And that very time, they talked about death as their topic.
You're kidding.
So like suddenly it was for me like, oh my God, someone is talking about this, because I hadn't found answers, and it was not an easy like conversation starter at school either. So it was finally, and I was together with this group of 20 people who are all above 50, some near their death, talking about death. And then, partly using the Buddhist lens, but also using their experiences. And then after that meeting, my dad never went back, and I went every single week. I went and I started chanting and meditating, and and that's kind of, and that I did that for 4 or 5 years.
Because you were living in Budapest back then?
Yeah, so between when I was 10 and 18, I lived in Budapest, and then I moved to Delft. And then when I was in Delft as well, I kept my Buddhist traditions, which is like created hilarious scenarios of me, chanting while like student flatmates of mine were like drinking beers next to me, and then me just trying to like dedicate myself to my practice. But after a while, they accepted it and understood it. But
so what happened with that first thing about death? What did the meeting help, or what happened in the weeks that followed?
Yeah, I think. I mean, this question of death, I think, has been quite a center point in my whole journey. So it's still a question that informs me today. And it's still something that inspires me a lot today. I think it's started losing the morbid feeling behind it, and now is like informing me more about what does aliveness feel like, and how do you feel really truly alive, you know? So it's like a more of an informant. And I think at that time, I think for a very long period, I kind of conceptualized it. I was like, oh, but if you do this and this, then death is okay or something. Or, you know, like I definitely, from when I was 16, spent multitude of years building this huge like spiritual framework under which I felt like, oh, okay, but if you live life in this way and this way and this way, and you do this and this and this, then it makes sense. And then the universe makes sense, and then the world makes sense. And I think just quite recently, I've gotten more into this place where it's like, okay, the whole framework is also just a framework I've created, and more trusting into the not knowing and into just the feeling of it and sensing and the real like direct experience. And from there, just feeling like, oh, I can live my truth from that without it having to have this huge conceptual framework that every time a new idea comes in, I have to force it into the framework. It costs so much energy. Like I've realized how much energy I spent in the last probably 10 years trying to like force things into my framework that was like really like this huge castle. Yeah.
So what is what is spirituality for you now, if you would give it words? What is the journey about? I know it's still words and it's still frameworking stuff, but
yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of like living as a form or living as a human from a deeper place, almost of unknowing, but like of an embrace of unknowing. So it's more like accepting kind of accepting the non-knowing, and really just stepping fully into kind of this human, very form experience, but with a connection to something greater that just helps inform actions. Or, you know, it's, I don't know, it's like so difficult to describe. It's really transformed into a feeling, which has transformed into aliveness and direction and a feeling of like, I don't know, of flowing as well. Yeah, it's very hard to describe.
So what does this mean? How do you do this? That living from a place of that connection. How do you cultivate that connection?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah. I think for the last 10 years, it's really, meditation has really been central in it. Meditation, just every day, sitting in the morning and sitting down and just looking at what would come up and looking at your thoughts and looking at the emotions and therefore just, yeah, I guess building awareness around everything that's going on and all your ideas and all your constructs and everything that happens at any moment. So I would definitely say meditation has been this center point as a practice in terms of cultivating that. And then I feel also just a kind of a vulnerability to direct experience, or a certain openness to direct experience that's really, as of late, or as of like the last 2 years, really informing my spiritual path. It's really just going through the direct experience and then being fully there with the emotions and energies that are there.
And what do you mean then with direct experience? What is that?
Yeah, it's I guess it's kind of like seeing your whole life as a meditative practice where you want to be completely there at the moment something is happening and be completely there with the emotion and energy and thoughts that are happening and kind of stay in that almost seat of awareness, almost as like third person perspective without being detached with it, but having this third person and just being fully there with that, what you're experiencing this very moment, and that seeing that what you're experiencing this very moment is exactly what you need to learn in that very moment, is exactly what you need to be with, exactly what you need to surrender to, and in that way kind of, you know, informing my growth path, informing like, oh, what's really present in me, oh, what's really causing resistance, oh, what's really making me sad, oh, what's really making me happy, and then and fully being with that, and through that direct experience of just embracing, the direct experience, whatever it is right in front of you, if it's making a cup of tea or being hit by a train, to be with it, even though that would be very hard with it.
Yeah, so how do you do it? I have to think about the, maybe you know, the Fight Club scene in which Brad Pitt throws, I think it's acid or something on the hands of Edward Norton, and he says, okay, stay with it. And of course, you want to go away with your mind. You want to leave that place of pain and suffering. Yeah. So, how do you do that? How do you stay with also the negative emotions or the negative things that are happening? Negative.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I think continuously getting better at it. I think there's still like negative emotions that I run away from. Like, we talked about this earlier as well, like loneliness is definitely like a negative feeling that comes up in me that I can still be like, nope, not facing this, gonna meet some people now. I think, or at least what really helps me is just this feeling, it's partly a reframing, like it's partly negative emotions are the most incredible like diamonds and gems of your life, and kind of holding that really far in the back of your mind and just knowing, oh, this is apparently something that has a deep opportunity and is a deep learning and is another gateway to me opening up my highest potential.
For our listeners, can you explain why those negative things are the diamonds?
I think often because they're the blockades that are still holding you back from you just expressing yourself fully, or they're on one side the learning blocks of you understanding what structures you have on your mind, or what emotions you're still holding on to from past traumas or from past things. So it's kind of like it's informing you in, hey, what's still resisting you? What's still holding you back? What do you still need to learn? And so by really looking at them and being with them, it's like, going through them, and through that, slowly letting go of these resistances of past emotions, of hopes for the future, or really really strong ideas that actually kept you boxed in, kept you structured, kept you in limits because you didn't want to touch it because it hurt. But if you're able to be with it and move through it, it expands and it opens up, and through that, I think your potential as a human expands, because you don't have to come into a situation and get triggered and therefore shut down and not be able to deal with the situation, but you can continuously better move into a situation, and at that moment in time feel, okay, I can feel into the situation, and from a place of clarity I can move with this situation and do something with the situation, which then my hope is you can take better informed decisions and help the evolution of mankind and the planet, and help people and do good and come from a place of love.